libraries and what libraries mean to me, and what reading means to me and has meant to me. Without overstating it, a library saved my life. Why do I say that? I was born in New York in 1945, and my parents were survivors of the Turkish genocide of the Armenians. And they were country peasants, they were country bumpkins, they were not educated at all. We didn't have any books at home. We got one newspaper, which would, by today's standards, make the Vancouver Sun look like the New York Times. It was called the New York Daily News. I mean, there was a tabloid that was 4/5 of the pages were black and white photographs, huge sports section, of course, huge weather section, and then a few things usually about crime and kidnapping and some local scandals. And so there wasn't much of an intellectual life at home, and I discovered the library, the Webster branch of the Andrew Carnegie Library on 78th Street and York Avenue. I lived on 87th Street, so it was a 9-block walk. And for me, it was a real refuge, a haven, for multiple reasons, not just for the intellectual content, because I had this just a ferocious desire to learn. I wanted to be everything my parents weren't. When I asked them about history, about, why did the Turks massacre the Armenians, they didn't know. They couldn't provide me with anything beyond simplistic, formulaic answers. Oh, they didn't like us, or we were Christian, or something like that. Totally unsatisfying, even to a 7 or 8-year-old. The other reason I liked the library so much was because there were no cockroaches. Every time I I grew up in a tenement flat, a railroad flat in New York. They were called railroad flats because they looked like a railroad car. They were long and narrow. There were no doors between the rooms. And so every time I went into the bathroom or the kitchen and turned on the light, the roaches would appear, and it just drove me crazy. So the library not only had books, but it had no roaches, and it was very well lit. And it was there that I really opened my mind, because schools are basically holding pens, and they're daycare centers, particularly in the early grades. And I was already very bored with standard education. I barely graduated from high school, by the way, and the only blemish on my resume is the 1 year I went to college and then dropped out. But at the library, I started reading. I got my hands on everything I could, even when I didn't understand the words. I would look at things like the Scientific American, Popular Science, all kinds of magazines and books, and particularly books such as The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. Upton Sinclair's book about the slaughterhouse industry in Chicago called The Jungle. Upton Sinclair was a muckraker in U.S. Journalism, a period when there was a great upsurge of independent reporting, exposing the robber barons and their malfeasances. I would read books like James Baldwin's essays, particularly one called Fifth Avenue Uptown, not very far from where I lived, but another world, because it was entirely black. It was African American. And I didn't know what Fifth Avenue Uptown was like until I read about it through Baldwin and then his novel, Another Country. I read works of nonfiction as well, Day of Infamy by Walter Lord. I read the Arthur Schlesinger trilogy on FDR and the New Deal. And all of these books, they had a huge impact on me. I remember being so proud to write book reports and take them in. I'd make a special cover and then punch holes in the side and maybe get some colored thread and pull it together. And books were very exciting. They were not just a source of information, but the world came alive, other worlds came alive. And I felt these intellectual horizons which were fairly limited by my circumstances at home, they burst open. And so I'm forever grateful to that library and libraries around North America and the world. There's a terrific one in Boulder, Colorado, where I now live, which is actually quite beautiful architecture. It's right on a stream, and so part of it is a bridge over a stream. I hope you can come and visit at some point.